Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but we want to give a shout out to our partners, Vital Signs Wall of Fame, the Florida Coaches Coalition, We Coach, and the Global Community of Women in High School Sports. You heard me say many times, these are four great organizations that you should really add to your network. And now, don't hit that fast forward button. Stay with us for the next 3 minutes. We're just going to give our sponsors a shout out. These are all great companies that I used as an athletic director. You should be using them too. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Vital Signs Wall of Fame for their support. Go to their website, vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles, and then check out the hundreds of testimonials from high schools and colleges that use their program to display their school records, their Hall of Fame, or just tell more compelling stories about their school. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention this podcast, you'll get a nice discount. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. Their team will start showing you how to create world-class marketing content for your school's social media channel. Go to Gipper.com. Tell them you heard about it on the podcast. They'll give you a nice discount. And again, they'll show you the impact that social media posts can have for your teams, your athletes, your entire athletic program. Go to Gipper.com and see how to do it. That's Gipper.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. I don't think I need to say anything more. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more support for you, more security for your school, and more customization for all the things you want to do. Hometown is here to make the best solution for you. That's hometownticketing.com. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their score boards and their score tables in action. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and check out their products today. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association platform for the podcast. It's also your one-stop platform for things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance, and a whole lot more. As an athletic director, I used Home Campus every single day, and it was just great. You'll love it too. Go to homecampus.com to get started. That's homecampus.com. We also want to thank our friends at Snap Mobile. Go to snapraise.com. Check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help you do your job better. Of course, there's Snap Raise, the fundraising platform, but you have Snap Store, Snap Connect, Snap Manage, and a whole lot more. You'll find it all at snapraise.com. We want to say thank you to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that allowed them to coach our kids up to their highest level. Go to huddle.com, see why we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 8 million users. Turn your school into a Huddle school. And we want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and an affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire program. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that allows you to take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. The information that they provide is tremendously valuable, and it's going to be overwhelmingly supportive. And that's important to be able to share with a frustrated parent, your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them create that custom survey for you. That's athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. If you're a member of the NIAAA and you've been taking LTI courses, you're in for a real treat. And even if you're not, you're in for a treat. Our guest today is Dr. Scott Smith. That's a familiar name, I hope. Scott's a certified master athletic administrator. In addition, he's a longtime college administrator in, sports management, athletic director administration programs, currently an associate professor at Tennessee Tech University. And he's also a longtime member of, the name is new, but the grouping is long time, the NIAAA's Professional Development Academy. He is very much on the front lines for all the NIAAA LTI course development. And we're excited to have him here today. Dr. Scott Smith, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording. It's an exciting time, for the NIAAA. They're rolling out a couple of new courses for this year's national conference. And for our listeners, we're recording this on September 22nd. So it'll be pretty timely when you listen. Scott, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, squeeze, the last 50 years into about 3 minutes. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Maybe take us up through your own high school and college years, and then we'll take a break, come back and hear more about your early career. But what's the Scott Smith origin story?
Well, I don't know if it'll be that fascinating, but absolutely. So I'm a Buckeye. Southwest Ohio, went to a really, really small high school. So we had 4 boys sports way back then, and that was it. And I did them all. In fact, I think I lettered 15 times out of 16 possibilities. So choir, band, the whole bit. You get to do a little bit of everything. But thought I wanted to be a college athlete. Wasn't nearly as good as I thought I was. So ended up going to Bluffton College and did play soccer there and ran track there. Really wanted to play basketball, but no left hand, and 5'11" just doesn't get it in college basketball. Anyway, so then I have to decide what I want to do. I'm in college. What are you going to do with it? I knew I wanted to coach. So back then, we're talking late 70s here. If you were going to coach in high school, you were going to teach. So I went into College of Education, phys ed, science. Science is easier to get a job. So I came out of Bluffton College, certified to teach sciences and willing to coach just about anything. Had lots of job offers for that reason. I ended up staying in Northwest Ohio and teaching and coaching, teaching science and coaching. Ultimately, started out first job, junior high boys track, first year. By my 9th year, I was head boys and girls track coach, head girls basketball coach, and did all the cross country. Also had done a little bit of junior college basketball coaching, and actually coached soccer back at my college, which was just up the road at Bluffton. So at the end of 9 years, I've had some good success, particularly with track and cross country. Thought maybe I wanted to be a college track and cross country coach. So took off, went and did a master's degree at UNLV. Did not find a college track and cross country job, but instead ended up with my first AD's job, halftime biology, halftime AD, mid-Missouri. So I was on my way at that point in time. And my AD life just progressed from there for about almost, probably another 15 years. I spent nearly a little over 20 years in K-12. And so that first AD's job was a mid-sized high school, Missouri, 850. I was the high school AD and the middle school AD. And the first year taught halftime biology. Second year, they made me the middle school assistant principal as well as AD. Tough job. One of the toughest, other than AD, the toughest job in school administration, I think, is middle school assistant principal.
Let's go. And I want to jump in there for a minute. And again, I'm fascinated by the career, and I'm also I'm fascinated by the number of parallels between our both of our careers here so far. Amazing. I want to jump all the way back to your high school days. You talked about four sports and also being in the band and choir. My early coaching career was at schools like that. And, nowadays, we just hear so much about kids specializing in sports. Looking back at your own high school days, and we're about the same age, were there any kids in your high school that, well, I just do this or I just do that? Obviously, there weren't club sports back then, but any specialization back in the day?
No, there was again, a pretty small core of us who were athletic in nature and had grown up playing Little League baseball. We didn't have a football program, too small. So quite a few of us, not a whole lot of them ran cross country, which was the only fall sport I did, but some of my peers did not. But many of the same people played basketball and baseball. I was fortunate enough that they allowed me to do both baseball and track in the spring, and there were a few of us that did that, and they just did their best not to have any big track meets on the same day as league baseball games. So in today's world, really difficult to do two sports in the same season. But no specialization back then. Just a matter of if you were athletic in nature and you enjoyed it, you were on one of the teams.
Well, and you bring up a good point. I was at a couple of schools where we did that very thing. Worked with our athletes. I think it comes down to the philosophy. What's the most important thing? Is it the school, or is it, we'll just pick out one. Is it the baseball team? And the baseball coach is saying, no, 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 you can't do that. We're not going to share you, even though those kids could help the school and probably not, have a negative impact on the team. So that's great. Obviously, the coaches were cooperating, and with only four sports, you probably didn't have that many coaches either. Yeah.
Well, let's see. I have one cross country coach, the basketball, baseball coach. Well, actually, I just had two coaches for many years: the cross country and track coach, and the baseball, basketball coach. So you get to know them pretty well. But on that point, in some later AD positions, I did have to face the issue of athletes wanting to be on two sports in the same season. One place I had a great javelin thrower who was also a baseball pitcher, state track meet type javelin thrower, and one of our best pitchers. And of course, you always face the issue of good soccer players probably could be your best kicker on the football team. So how do you make that happen if you can?
Yeah, no, I want to talk about that subject when we get to the AD part. Let's fast forward to your college days. You mentioned, your undergraduate curriculum, the old PE major, which I don't even know if that exists anymore. Now it's, sport management and athletic administration. I mean, seriously, should a 20-year-old be training to be an AD? I think they should be training to be a coach and a teacher and then get those practical, but that's another topic. Looking at your own undergraduate curriculum, were there any courses that you took in that old PE major that maybe at the time you're thinking, geez, I'm never going to use this, but later on as a coach or as an AD, you're thinking, hey, that was an important lesson back in the day. Anything stick out for you?
Well, I actually chose to go the science route instead of PE, but I did take some PE courses when I could. So as a science major, several courses really came to help me early in my coaching career. I didn't really have any coaching courses, but did have some organization administration of physical education programs, and you learned how to teach skills, how to throw, how to bat, the proper way to run, and those kinds of things. So those were invaluable in my early coaching days. The other one that was really key was I took an athletic training course, just one, but in my early coaching days, we only had a bit of a trainer, and we were lucky we had some, but still, coaches in those days, they taped ankles, they took care of injuries. And so by way of having that athletic training course, plus my in my science curriculum, I had exercise science and physiology and anatomy. I was kind of, sometimes I was the go-to coach that would have to go over to to another sport and tape an ankle because there was no trainer available. So, both of those paths, you will, the training piece and learning how to teach kids to run and throw and bat, those were both extremely valuable to me when in my younger coaching days.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to echo that 100%. In fact, I carried my organization and administration of physical education textbook forever. And one of our many, many moves, it got lost. I was crushed, but absolutely. And I can still go to a high school game today, basketball, volleyball, soccer, you name it. I'll tape just as good as that trainer. I feel pretty good about that.
That first textbook didn't happen to be authored by Charles Bucher, did it?
I think so, my friend. Yeah.
He was very strange, very ironic. Charles was my master's program advisor. He had retired from the New York system and retired to Las Vegas and went to work at UNLV in the physical education and athletic administration program. So when I did my master's there in athletic administration and PE, he was my advisor. He was meant. What a wealth of knowledge the guy had. He passed away soon, right about the time I was leaving, but great guy.
Well, you just inspired me. When we're done, I'm going to go online. I'm going to find a copy. I might have to go to eBay or somewhere. I'm going to get a copy of that book and reinsert it into my professional library.
For many, many years, that was the Bible, and it was the only one. So that's why I assumed that probably was the book you had used. That's one we used.
Oh no, absolutely, and it was such a great resource. But
yep.
we digress. Hey, for our listeners, we're visiting today with Dr. Scott Smith, longtime professor at the college level in sport administration, athletic management, currently at Tennessee Tech University, also part of the NIAAA's Professional Development Academy. We're going to take our first break, but we are coming back with a lot more, so stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame for their support of the podcast. Go to their website, which is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's a great way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the sports, or your school's Hall of Fame, as well as tell your school's story. Share your proudest moments and acknowledge your top role models. Go to the website, vitalsignswalloffame.com. Mention the podcast. You'll also get a nice discount. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Let them help you bring your school's legacy to life. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Scott, you took us up through, your college, your undergraduate and your graduate days, your early career. Talk a little bit about that transition from, teacher coach to that first AD job and how it developed from there.
Well, as I said, my first AD job's small, average size school in Missouri. And so three classes of biology in the morning and AD in the afternoon. And then the next 2 years shared assistant principalship. So a lot of time management, a lot of juggling. Fortunately, the good news was the assistant principal, who had been the AD, was in the office next door. So when I had a question, he could answer it. But lots of learning to do. I still remember not being smart enough to double check schedules, and we lived right on I-70, and to this day I still remember the story of we're going to play volleyball at Rockbridge, and Rockbridge is coming to our place to play volleyball, and the buses pass on I-70. So good, important point to always double check schedules. And of course, back then we weren't texting and emailing back and forth. It was nothing but phone calls and postcards and letters. So it wasn't as easy as it is today, but still it has to be done. But I think my biggest transition going into the athletic director's office was learning that I'm not going to deal with athletes and kids 2-3 hours every day and sit with them on the bench and be in the stand when they're running on the track. So learning how to interact more with coaches. Yeah, you still get some contact with kids, particularly when you're in a single high school and not in a district office. But you have to almost force that to happen. You gotta go visit with kids at practice. You got to catch them in the hall. You got to bring them into your office for a visit sometimes. But you really the great news is, if you truly believe and are passionate about interscholastic sport like you and I are, and almost everyone in NIAAA is, one of the things that you got to remember is when you're a coach, you're affecting 20 kids, 40 kids, whatever on your team. When you're an AD, you're affecting 400, 300, 500, 1,000, depending on the. So, you can really affect many more kids through the coaches as the AD than you can just as a coach. So that was a learning process that took a couple of years, but eventually I kind of got used to that.
It seems, I hate this phrase, back in our day, as we were coming out, and you kind of mentioned it, you had your teaching degree and you were a science teacher, but you also had the ability to coach a number of sports, and I had a combined major, health and PE, and that health endorsement really opened the door for me.
Yeah.
But again, was willing to coach just about anything. The current generation of college graduates, it doesn't seem to, there don't seem to be as many, coaching applicants. And it seems like some schools are not valuing what the teacher coach can bring. From your perspective, as a, school administrator, what were some of the things that you were looking for when you went to hire a teacher, whether it's math, English, science, you name it?
Well, first of all, you got to really be upfront and hopefully you've developed by now a good relationship with your principal. But it is absolutely crucial if you're going to be successful as an AD to be on the same page and to have a good working relationship with that principal. Every year we need coaches more and more as the number of programs have grown. And of course, we're in a time today where almost no district gets by without hiring non-teacher coaches. But at the very least, can you put your head coaches in the building? Can you put your head coaches as teachers in the district? And that helps a lot. But that's only going to happen if you've got a good relationship, and not only with your building principal, but the middle school principal, and even in some districts, elementary teachers have the ability to coach depending on when they get out of school and their background and if they're willing to do so. So having great relationship with all the administrators in the district, HR director, if it's a big district, assistant superintendent, I think is really crucial to being able to bring in quality teachers and coaches. Point number 2 is you've got to make sure they understand that we all know most really good coaches are excellent classroom teachers. There's just a connect there. I rarely find a great coach who doesn't do a good job in the classroom, and vice versa. And in fact, I've walked into classrooms of teachers who I knew were excellent, who weren't coaching, just to see what kind of sport background they might have. And, hey, would you be interested in junior high tennis? It's not a long season. It's not a long day. I know you play tennis, and I know you'll do a great job. So I think convincing the administration great teachers are great coaches and vice versa goes a long way.
You're absolutely right. I used to do that same thing at the start of the year. I'd get 5 minutes in front of all the new teacher hires, and introduce myself and let them know, hey, we're excited you're here. We've got openings, for coaching positions, for stat keepers, for scoreboard operators. We want to get you involved in the program. And really came across some outstanding coaches, in a couple of cases, a head coach, but usually, like you said, an assistant coach, a lower level coach that took those skills that they had, those tools, if you will, that they used with great success in the classroom, and then utilized them in another learning environment on the tennis court or the pool or wherever it was. Okay? It makes both programs so much better, and helps to reduce and hopefully eliminate any sort of potential, conflict between, academics and athletics. Okay?
So that's so true. I mean, the more teachers you have that coach and work, and even if they don't coach, but maybe they work games and contests, the more involved the teachers can be, the more they see what's going on, and it's good stuff, and the less they are going to be combative about an early dismissal when you have to get someplace, or filling out grade reports, those kinds of things.
No, absolutely right. Spot on. Great tips. Once again, for our listeners, our guest today is Dr. Scott Smith, longtime college, faculty member, administrator, an expert in athletics and athletic administration. We're going to take another quick break, but we're coming back, so please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Gipper. Gipper is the official social media graphics solution for the podcast. And if you go to Gipper.com, their team is going to show you how to start creating world-class marketing content on your school's social media channel. People that use Gipper call it a game changer. And if you go to Gipper.com, make sure you mention the podcast. You're going to see some testimonials from athletic directors and coaches that use Gipper to promote their athletes, to celebrate the accomplishments of their teams, and take control of the narrative for their athletic department. Go to Gipper.com, start creating that content. It's so easy, even I can do it, that's going to make you a hit with your students, your coaches, and your fans. That's Gipper.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. Their team is going to show you how to set up and start selling your tickets online, not just for athletic events, but for things like school plays and concerts, school dances, even graduation. And here's the best part. Every high school is assigned a dedicated client success manager that's going to provide you hands-on support every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more support, more security, and more customization. Hometown is here to make the best online ticketing solution for you. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Dr. Scott Smith. He's a professor at Tennessee Tech University. He's also part of the NIAAA's Professional Development Academy. Scott, we get a lot of younger athletic directors that listen to the podcast, and I think it's important for them to hear about the journey that, people like you and I, old guys, have taken with our state association and with the NIAAA, with LTI courses and certification. So tell us about your journey. How did you first get involved? How did you hear about the NIAAA, and talk maybe a little bit about where it's brought you today?
Absolutely. So my first AD's job in Missouri, I did get involved with the state athletic directors and a state AD's conference, but at the time, certification, the basic CAA was just getting started, and the only way to take the CAA exam was at the national conference, and the first one I believe was 88. No, excuse me. 88. So in the second year, and I saw what this was, I was able to convince my assistant superintendent to let me go to the national conference. Bad news is it was in Las Vegas, so that was a little bit. You really have to talk your way in to go to the national conference and use school money when it's in Vegas. But bottom line is, no, excuse me, it was in Anaheim, so it was a long trip. But So I was able to get some funds, went to the national conference in Anaheim, took the CAA exam in '89, which was my second year as an AD. Moving on into then, so I took a little bit of time off as I was working on my PhD, but then when I went to Wichita as a district athletic director, I immediately got involved again, started going to national conferences, was part of the KIAAA in Kansas. In fact, towards the end of my career, Wichita was the very first state leadership coordinator as the program just got started. So that I continued with them, and then I made another move to Dayton and continued to get involved with the OIAAA. But what really kind of launched me more into more than just being a member, when I ultimately went to higher ed and it was up at Central Michigan, well, right before I did that, I became a member. So my first committee was actually it was issues and resolutions. The committee got dissolved. But they wanted to move members from that committee to another committee. And Dr. John Olson, who we all know and love, we have become acquainted, and he knew me, and he knew I was in academic writing and so on. And so he said, I'm gonna tell them to, if you'll allow me, I'm gonna tell them that they should put you on publications. And so I became a member of the publications committee. And even though I wasn't an active AD, I was a lifetime member, in fact, of the NIAAA. And so as I transitioned to higher ed at Central Michigan, I continued to serve on publications committee with the NIAAA and stay involved. And I was fortunate in that at Central Michigan, they allowed me to maintain that engagement with the NIAAA. So I've had, we're getting ahead of ourselves maybe a little bit, but I've had a really good ability to have two distinct levels of careers, but keep them married, if you will, because all through my 20 plus years in higher ed now, I've continued to stay engaged with interscholastic sport, and with the NIAAA. So a few years passed, and John was getting ready to kind of retire away from some of his positions with the NIAAA, and so I actually, in fact, this was another trip to Anaheim. I interviewed with the president and past president of the NIAAA, and at the time Bruce was the NIAAA executive director. He was also in the hotel room. I interviewed for John's position as director of new leadership training courses, and took that on. And then ultimately John left completely. And so again, because of my both being an AD background and being in higher ed, I also assumed his role as a university liaison. So that's kind of where I've been the last 10 to 15 years, last 10 where I've had both positions. So currently, as part of the PDA leadership team, the Professional Development Academy's leadership team, I have two roles. I direct, but I work with some other folks. But I work with new course authors as new courses are developed. The other half of my role with the NIAAA is technically called the University Liaison. And as many folks know, we've got university and college partners that utilize leadership training materials within their courses and their coursework. And I'm kind of the go-between, particularly up in the upfront stages where someone's interested, and I kind of talk them through the potential process, and we talk about, is this right for you, and how might you use these, and here's how other partners do that. So that's what I do. It's one of my part-time gigs.
Both of those I think are very important, and we're going to talk about new courses, the new course development in our next segment. But let's talk about the university program. And again, these are my words, so correct me if I'm wrong. There's a number of universities across the country that partner, for lack of a better word, with the NIAAA to either offer the exact LTI course or cover the material presented in a particular LTI course, sometimes several. so that the individuals who are enrolled in their master's program, when they graduate, they have met the class requirements for the LTI courses, but they still have to sit and take the CAA exam through either a state association or the NIAAA. Was that a accurate summary?
Pretty much spot on. So you've got it down. So again, we currently have around 15. I'm actually this week. I had long Zoom meetings with two potentially new partners, and I won't name them at this point in time because it's way too early in the process. But in general, the model, probably the most common model, is that a college or university will use the three basics: 501, 502, 503, and they'll use those in an administration and organization class. A lot of times it's administration organization of interscholastic sport as a standalone. So they'll use those course materials, combine all three of those, and it's kind of the here's what it means to be and what you need to know and do to be a high school AD. And by virtue of the fact that I've been able to assure the executive director and the board, the NIAAA board, that students at that university taking that class are indeed using our materials, NIAAA materials, and or getting what they are getting what they need to know, just as if they went to a national conference and sat for 4 hours and took 501. Because those students then get NIAAA credit for those classes, and it will remain in their profile. If they're members, it's in their member profile. If they're non-members, it's in their non-member profile. But they're there and ready for them if they decide and when they decide to go down the path of trying to become an AD or getting that first AD's job. So a lot of a lot of universities want those first three because, as you know, 501, 203 are the primary ingredients of RAA, the lowest level certification. A number of other universities want to take the next step, and although they cannot award the CAA, of course, the university cannot, they can prepare their students further down that path. So they'll put 504, 506 into a legal course that they have in their curriculum. So that may be the most common model, is those 5 classes embedded within the university's curriculum, and then their students have those 5 courses, and those are the 5 you have to have as one component of being prepared to take the CAA exam. Some universities have gone much further. Not to mention all the names, but Ohio U embeds 11 LTCs in their program. Morningside built their entire master's degree with 30 plus LTCs. So it kind of runs the gamut, but again, probably the most common model is those 3 or 5 basic classes. Typically, you'll find it's in a sport management program or sport admin master's program. And sometimes it's a generic program, and so they'll have 1 or 2 classes geared towards interscholastic sport. Maybe they have a concentration or a specialization in interscholastic sport. Ohio U's program is 100% focused on preparing interscholastic ADs. Another place you'll see it, and this was one of the partners I just talked to yesterday, as a concentration or a certification under an educational leadership program, where the master's itself is really built to get you a principal or administrator certificate, but within that you can get a certification for interscholastic sport also. So that's probably the most common way, and they take those materials and they embed them into their courses, usually not in a sit-down fashion for 4 hours like ADs would do at a conference, but more spread out along with other material that they've added as part of their curriculum.
Yeah, again, really appreciate you going into that detail. We're going to take a break, but before we do, and we'll do this at the end of the podcast, Scott, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, find out more about, the NIAAA program, or just pick your brain a little bit as a great resource. And listeners, I think you got a great resource here. What's the best way they can get hold of you? What's the best way they can get in touch with the NIAAA?
They can do one of two things. If they're interested, if they happen to know a university that could be a partner, or they're in a university setting and happen to be listening to this, and they think this whets their appetite a little bit, they can go to the NIAAA.org website, and there's you can contact them with a question, an information question, and that goes to one of the office staff. And if it has to do with a university, then it's going to get forwarded to me, and I will contact them. The other way is simply email me directly. And you want me to give my email address?
If you're okay with it, sure.
I'm fine. Smith with an S at the end, Smith S 14 at ohio.edu. As you said, I'm now at Tennessee Tech full time, but I maintain two separate email systems just to try to keep things a little bit separate. So Smith S14 at ohio.edu. If it's an NIAAA question.
Okay. Once again, for listeners, we're visiting today with Dr. Scott Smith, Tennessee Tech University, and the NIAAA's Professional Development Academy. We're going to take another break. I know that's shocking to our regular listeners, but we're going to be back with more. So please stay with us. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule a live web demo and see their score boards and their score tables in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an AD was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Of course, we use it for home games, but we also used it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. They're tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo and see those tables and boards in action. Sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Home Campus. Go to homecampus.com to get signed up. Home Campus is the exclusive high school and state association management platform for us. It also could be your one-stop platform for things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance, and a whole lot more. As I said, go to homecampus.com, talk to their team, see all the things they can do for you. That's homecampus.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Scott, you mentioned in the previous segment that one of the things that you do is kind of help with the development, authorship, and release of LTI courses through the NIAAA. I know there's well over 50 courses. I think I've taken, maybe 45 or so myself, but we've got three. The NIAAA has three new courses that they're rolling out in December at this year's NADC conference. Can you give our listeners a little bit of a sneak preview of those three before, so maybe before they registers, so they can sign up for them?
Absolutely. So as you say, they're over 50. I don't know if you were there. It was in Florida. It was in Orlando, and I took the very first 501 ever and sat for 8 hours. And one of my Wichita ADs was in there with me, and we came out and thought, not sure if this program's going to make it. So from that one, I think we're going to teach 58 or 58, I believe, 57 or 58 in Orlando this go around in December. But as you say, we have we've taken 3 new courses from the beginning through the piloting, and they're on final revisions right now as we speak. But they're set to launch in Orlando. One of them's been over 2 years, but typically it takes about 2 years to get through the timeline and the process of starting a new course from scratch and then getting it all the way to launch at the national conference. So make sure I get my numbers straight here between LTCs and my course numbers at Tennessee Tech and so on. I have so many numbers that are going through my head. I want to make sure I get it right. So 601 is a new course about developing athletic department handbooks. Yes, there's some handbook piece in the 500s a little bit, but this one goes into depth of building handbooks, and not just the student handbook, the coach's handbook, booster club handbook, et cetera. So it covers a lot of different handbooks and some of the legal pieces about developing the handbooks. 603 is another new course, building pyramids of success in K-12 athletic programs. And this course looks at a number of, kind of builds a little bit on John Wooden's pyramid of success, not to infringe on copyrights, but it kind of starts from that, but it builds a number of different pyramids within different areas of the program, piloted very successfully to the state coordinators just recently. And the last course is 717, identifying the need for and effective change and affecting change in athletic administration. So this course kind of talks about what needs to change in your program, rules, culture, whatever it might be, identifying those things that kind of need to be revised to change for the better, and then how do you affect that change and bring it to fruition. So those are the three new ones. I would say to folks, if you're considering going, or if you're going or are considering going to Orlando to the national conference, and you want one of those three new ones, you should sign up soon, because typically new courses sell out fairly quickly, and will be capped at the room cap, which is typically around 75 or 80 people, and we'll usually have that many in brand new courses, because there are some folks out there who want to make sure they try to take every LTC that's on there and it gets on their profile. So, and of course, best way to do that is go to niAAA.org and go to the conference site and then find the LTC registration there.
You're absolutely right about those new courses. And I remember with great fondness a couple of years ago, I was very fortunate to be part of Rich Barton and Candace Williams' team for the new parenting course.
Mm-hmm.
I think we actually had 90 or 91 in that room. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Was that a record for a new course?
Yeah. The only thing that possibly could have exceeded that would have been the last time we added a 508 or 510 legal, and Lee Green was still doing the legals then, because people would flock to those, of course. But usually we can't get 90 in a room, so it usually stops at 80. So maybe that's a record that'll last forever.
Oh, I'm sure there were some, and I'll deny I ever said this, but I'm sure there were some fire code violations with the number of people we had in the room. You mentioned in the previous segment, that you work with, the teams as they develop new courses. And obviously this isn't something for a beginner, but how do, let's say in maybe 2 minutes, how do those new courses take shape? What's the process?
So there's one of two ways. Probably I wouldn't say one's more common than the other. The first way is we continue, we being the PDA team and the 80 to 90 state coordinators that gather in Indianapolis each September and then meet again at the national conference. And we brainstorm hot new topics, things that are issues that need to be addressed, or something that really is kind of new and unknown to ADs, and they need information on how to handle something. So what are those things that are not currently covered with leadership training courses? And is it something that justifies a 3 or 4 hour, almost all of our courses are 4, but we do have a couple 3-hour classes. But is it truly a 4-hour sit down leadership training course, or should it just be a current issue or a workshop topic? And a lot of our courses started as a workshop topic and then evolved from there. So, and if so, then we'll try to build a team around that with people who are interested in that topic and maybe have some expertise. The other way is simply an AD, a current AD, whether it be a state coordinator or someone out in the States who maybe doesn't even go to national conference that often, has some expertise or some interest in a particular topic, and approaches us to potentially author and develop a new leadership training course. And so at that point in time, we ask for some upfront information from them. Basically, the real thing is why is there a need for this, and what are you looking at outline wise for the topics of the course? And then our new course development team will take that and fare through it and talk about it. And ultimately, typically at our February meetings, we will present that to, assuming that it is a viable potential topic, we'll present that to the whole PDA team at our February meeting. And that kind of starts the timeline. And if it looks like it's a good idea and a couple of things, we want to make sure it doesn't infringe on other courses, at least not very much. If it does, it's got to be really taking a smaller topic and really expanding it, because we don't want duplication. It's easy to do, and we've got a little bit of that here and there, but we try to avoid that as much as we can. And then it kind of starts the process. And from there, that particular person or a couple of people starts to build an author/contributor team. And we've been working a lot lately to try and keep those teams as diverse as possible, and not just diverse in terms of gender and ethnicity, et cetera, but geographically, and size of districts and types of districts, so that the whole membership and all different types of schools and states and regions are represented on that team. And you don't have to be a course author. You can just be a contributor. Maybe you don't want to spend the next 2 years meeting every month and writing a course, but you do have some expertise and knowledge in the area. So yeah, you can be a contributor without being a full-blown author. Yeah, and then in year 2, as it progresses, it has to go through some piloting, at least 2 pilots. One sometimes, because we've had so many lately, 3 here. Excuse that phone in the background.
Can't hear it.
Sorry. But so you pilot to the board or to the PDA team usually in July, and then you pilot to the state coordinators in September. We've had 3 this year. We might have 4 new ones next year, so we can't do all of those live to live or face to face live. So we sometimes will have the team Zoom one of those presentations, which is a good thing, because a lot of our courses ultimately do end up being presented in a virtual format or even online ultimately. So they have to get through both pilots. They're edited, they're revised. We get feedback, and really, with the blessing of the state coordinators in September, if there are no serious issues, then a final revision, and it goes to launch in December.
Yeah, very cool. Appreciate you taking the time to do that. We're going to take a break, but one more time before we go, give out the names of those 3 new courses that are going to be available in December at this year's NADC.
Yep. 601, Developing Athletic Department Handbooks. 603, Building Pyramids of Success in K-12 Athletic Programs. And I forgot to mention when I was talking about that one, another facet of that course is looking all the way down through your program, your youth sport, your club sport, your city parks and rec, further down than just your middle school. And finally, 717, identifying the need and affecting change in athletic administration.
Okay. Dr. Scott Smith, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, and the head of the NIAAA's Professional Development Academy. Going to take another break, but please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank the good folks at Snap Mobile for their support of the podcast. Go to snapraise.com. That's the website, SnapRaise. Check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help you do your job better. If you're looking for a fundraising platform, stop right here. SnapRaise is hands down the best one out there. We used it at our schools with great success, and so will you. But there's a lot more. You've got Snap Connect, Snap Store, Snap Manage. You'll find them all at snapraise.com. That's snapraise.com. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way that you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years and it was just great. But when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that helped them coach our kids up to their highest level. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Go to huddle.com. Turn your school into a Huddle school. Join the 8 million users. Go to huddle.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Scott, one of the things we try to do with this podcast is the idea of sharing best practices with ADs. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What are some things that you did as an athletic director, as a leader, or maybe things that you saw from at other schools that you would consider a best practice that you can share right now?
I think I would highlight two things, and believe me, this was a learning process, and I didn't do either up front. But in my progression, I went from a single high school, middle school to being a district AD, assistant superintendent in two large districts, and then I've ended my AD career back as a single high school, middle school AD. So some of these things I learned on the job early, and I tried to pass them on to my building ADs when I was a district AD. But then when I went back to my last single school, I was able to practice it myself, if you will. So again, two things I think. One is transparency. In several AD positions that I took over, just things like coaches had no idea what their budget looked like. Nobody knew what kind of money we were spending. Nobody knew why some decisions were made. And so ultimately, I figured out the more transparent I am to coaches, to athletes, to parents, to the community, to the administration, the easier it was for them to understand why I made decisions I made, why certain policies were in effect, rules and regulations, particularly with the naysayers that might be out in the community or with some parents that are sometimes negative. So I think being as transparent as you can. Obviously, there are some things you can't share, personnel decisions, et cetera, rules about health concerns with HIPAA, for example, or other student conduct issues that you can't be transparent about. But when you can, tell people why things are the way they are and how things stand. I think that goes a long way. The second piece for me is being proactive. Being an AD is a tough job. I'm teaching an organization administration of interscholastic sport class right now to upper level undergrads, and I'm trying to get them to see this is a tough job, but it can be a very fulfilling one. But if you're going to be successful, and being successful means not just winning games or having a great program, it's staying in the job, because you and I both know, and most of our listeners know, turnover rate for high school athletic directors is extremely high. Some states and regions worse than others. But what I usually see when turnover is taking place is an AD that was, number one, ill prepared, and number two, doesn't work up front to prevent problems. And so they're always putting out fires, and that gets old quick. Just making sure codes of conduct are well communicated, making sure all board policies are up to date, making sure you've got handbooks, the vis-a-vis the 601 class. Those things that you can do to build in the framework and the structure up front, and then be transparent about all those things, then you're preventing things. It's like if you're always having to throw people out of your gym because they're all over the officials or the coaches, you haven't done a very good job up front communicating what sportsmanship has to be like in your district and what can happen. So again, I was putting out fires all the time my first couple of years, and then ultimately I figured out, there's a reason for that, because they didn't know they could act that way, or they didn't know this was the rule there. So be proactive. Cut. You can get rid of 3/4 of those problems ahead of time, and they won't come up, and it'll make your life a lot easier, and maybe you'll last a little longer in the position.
Well, again, I'm right there with you. Some of those lessons that we learned as ADs or as coaches the hard way. If somebody could have shared these with us earlier on, the transparency and then the intentionality. Just letting your coaches and your parents. This is how we roll. Okay, and so great. Scott, this has been great. It's almost like we're at state coordinators again. We're just hanging out together, but we're not done yet. We always wrap up the podcast with the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you certainly know your way around the world of athletics, but we're going to take our final break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor this segment. When we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. Now, certainly transparency and originality or intentionality are 2 good tools, but let's go and take that final break. And when we come back, we're going to find out what Dr. Scott Smith is going to put in his new athletic director toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. Athletic Surveys are a quick, easy, and an affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire program. At my school, we use surveys for just about everything, for kids, for coaches, for parents, and most of the feedback that comes back, probably 90% or more, was overwhelmingly positive. But Athletic Surveys will create a custom survey for you that allows you to connect with the 90% and the 10% or less that want to complain about everything. And that information is tremendously valuable when you're sitting with a frustrated parent or your principal or your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Like I said, they'll create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. Athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We have been visiting today with Dr. Scott Smith, longtime athletic administrator, longtime college professor, and currently part of the NIAAA's Professional Development Academy. He shared a wealth of information about that program. Right now, I'm going to challenge him to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let him put 3 things in the toolbox. So, Scott, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
Well, number 1 probably has been used before, but I don't think I can stress it enough for a new AD. First thing you got to do is join and get engaged in your state athletic directors association, whether it be FIAAA, OIAAA, or whatever it's named in your state. But you've got to be engaged with that group of people, and use that collective wisdom, use the professional development they provide. Go to the state conference. Almost everybody can get to a state conference if you do your timing right and you ask properly. So get to that state conference. The follow-up to that is, when and if you can, is go to the next step, and that is become a member of the NIAAA and potentially even go to the national conference. I know that can get sometimes you just can't go to national conferences from your district, or sometimes it has to come out of your own pocket, and it does cost a bit. But anytime you can, and maybe you have to wait until it comes your way in terms of geographic location, but anytime you can, try to get yourself to the national conference also. And join the NIAAA and take advantage of what the NIAAA offers. And that means take LTC courses. You do not have to go to conference to take LTCs. There are webinars all the time. There are at the state conference, there are classes, and there are online classes. So look and see what interests you, where you might be weak in a particular area. Maybe it's budget and finance, maybe it's marketing and promotions or something. And then take those LTCs, because there's all great information in there. Point two is kind of a parallel to that. And I say you got to form a close and collective team. Those teammates being other ADs that you can call them for help. They got to be on your speed dial. They got to be in your text numbers. But get that small team together. One thing we all know, ADs are not proud. We beg, borrow, and steal every time we can. We don't worry about copyright infringements. If you got a great idea, I'm going to use it. I'm just going to change the name at the top. But you got to having that small team of people that you can call on and help you when you got an issue, you want to talk something through. Something happened last night at the game, you're not sure how you're going to handle it Monday. Call a couple of them and say, what do you think? How's this going to work? Etc. So that small team of people, I think, is important. Number three, and you said I can only have three, but they're small ones, so I'm going to take four if you don't mind. Number three, the most important thing you can do when you become a new AD, there's three people that are three positions, and it might be multiple people, but there's three people that need to become your best friends: the principal secretary, the custodian, and the groundskeeper. And maybe there's more than one custodian and more than one's groundskeeper, because many of us come to work and the day shift guy is there, and when we go home, the second shift person is there. But those three people can make or break you. So get to know them, take care of them. When you're buying hats, they get a hat. When you're buying shirts, they get a shirt. And don't ever not show your appreciation to the work that they do. Number four is a little bit unique. So maybe somebody else had those other three. I don't know if anyone had this one or not, but this is a book that I read a long time ago. There's an updated one. And so it's a time management piece. And one of the experts in time management is an author by the name of Brian Tracy. So I always tell people when I'm talking about time management, eat that frog. And this book sits on my bookshelf. And it's 21 great ways to stop procrastinating and get more done in less time. But the reason I like this is something, again, that I learned the hard way. And eat that frog means if the worst thing you have to do today is eat a frog, then do it first. And what that really means is, what's the worst thing on your calendar today? What's the worst thing on your to-do, on your agenda? I got to call that parent and tell them his kid's going to be suspended for a month or a season, or I've got to, whatever it might be, whatever the worst thing is, do it right now. Do it first. Get it off your plate. Otherwise, it's sitting there nagging at us, and we're not effective doing other things because in the background, we say, oh man, I got to do that and I don't want to. Eat that frog now. It'll make the rest of your day go a lot better. That's my tips.
Well, you have done it, sir. We have been doing this for 3.5 years. We've done almost 500 interviews, and all of your toolbox tips are great, but you've come up with another, there's only been 20 unique tools. Eat that frog. It's going into the 3rd edition of the toolbox, and yeah, outstanding. I just love the concept. I love the idea, and the fact that it's already in a book, very, very cool.
Make sure Brian Tracy gets credit, because it's not my idea.
Okay, we'll put that in there as well. Scott, again, this has been great hanging out with you for just a little bit. Looking forward to seeing you again in December. Once more, if one of our listeners wants to find out more about anything NIAAA, or if they want to add you to their network and add you as a resource, how do they do that?
Send me an email. I'm not at my age, I'm not as so good on social media. So I don't do a lot of that, but I do email. And so contact me in my email, smiths14@ohio.edu. Just if you want to be part of a network, I am on LinkedIn, which you can network that way. But particularly if you got any questions at all about NIAAA content, the leadership training program, college partnerships, anything like that, don't be afraid to shoot me an email.
Scott, again, thanks so much for sharing with our listeners. Dr. Scott Smith, Certified Master Athletic Administrator. All the best for the remaining fall months. And as I said, looking forward to seeing you in December down in Orlando.
See you in Orlando.
For listeners, of course, we appreciate your support. And we also upload these Zoom recordings to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. Thanks as always for listening. Come back next time for another great interview and just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time, and we'll see you in Orlando.